Kayamika Obi stared at the pregnancy test in her trembling hands, watching as two pink lines appeared in the small window. Positive. She was pregnant. At 28 years old, she was one of the most respected mathematics teachers at River State University in Port Harcourt. Students loved her teaching style, patient, clear, encouraging. Her colleagues admired her professionalism. She built a career she was proud of, a reputation that took years to establish. And now, with two pink lines on a plastic stick, everything was about to come crashing down, because the father of her baby was Chukwudi Ease, her student, a 22-year-old final-year engineering student who sat in the third row of her advanced calculus class. Kayamika sat on the edge of her bathtub and let the tears fall. How had she let this happen? How had she been so foolish, so reckless, so... But even as she cried, she couldn't deny the truth. She loved him. God help her. She loved him. It had started innocently enough 6 months ago. Chukwudi had struggled with a particularly difficult concept in calculus and stayed after class to ask for extra help. Kayamika had agreed, and what began as one tutoring session became weekly meetings in her office. She'd noticed things about him that she tried to ignore. The way his eyes lit up when he finally understood a complex formula, his genuine passion for learning, the kindness in his voice when he asked how her day had been. He was mature beyond his years, thoughtful, respectful. "You're not like other lecturers," he'd said one evening after a particularly long session. "You actually care if we understand, not just if we pass." "Of course I care," she'd replied. "Teaching isn't just about grades. It's about helping minds grow." He'd smiled at her then, and something in that smile had made her heart skip in a way she knew it shouldn't. The line had been crossed 3 months ago. It was late. They were alone in her office, and somehow their hands had touched over a textbook. The touch had lasted too long. Their eyes had met, and before either of them could think about consequences, they were kissing. "This is wrong," Kayamika had whispered, pulling away. "I know," Chukwudi had replied, "but it doesn't feel wrong." And it hadn't. For 3 months, they'd carried on a secret relationship. Stolen moments in her apartment off campus, careful to never show any sign of familiarity at school. Chukwudi had been the one to suggest they keep it hidden until he graduated. "Just 3 more months," he'd said. "Then I'll be done with school, and we can be together properly. No one can say anything then." But now there was a baby, and 3 months was too long to hide this. Kayamika's phone buzzed. A text from Chukwudi. "Can I see you tonight? I miss you." Her fingers shook as she typed back, "Come to my place. We need to talk." When Chukwudi arrived 2 hours later, Kayamika was sitting on her small sofa, the pregnancy test on the coffee table in front of her. He took one look at it, and his face went pale. "Is that?" "Positive," she said quietly. "I'm pregnant, Chukwudi." He sank onto the sofa beside her, staring at the test. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then he took her hand. "Okay," he said. "Okay, we'll figure this out." "Figured out?" Kayamika pulled her hand away. "Chukwudi, do you understand what this means? I'm a lecturer. You're my student. When people find out, and they will find out, my career's over. Your education could be destroyed. Our families will accept it eventually," he said. But even he didn't sound convinced. "No, they won't. Your father is Chief Ease, a respected village chief. My mother already thinks I'm too old to be unmarried. When they find out I'm pregnant for a student, for someone 6 years younger..." She laughed bitterly. "They'll disown us both." Chukwudi turned her face toward him. "Kayamika, listen to me. I know this isn't how we planned things. I know it's going to be difficult. But I love you. I've loved you from the first day you explained that calculus problem with such patience that I finally understood it after struggling for weeks. You see me, not just as a student or a young person to dismiss, but as a man. And I see you, not as just a lecturer, but as the woman I want to spend my life with. Love isn't enough when the whole world is against you," she whispered. "Then we'll face the world together." He placed his hand on her still flat stomach. "This is our baby, our family, and I'm not going to run away from that." Kayamika wanted to believe him. God, She wanted to believe that love could be enough, that they could weather the storm that was coming. But she'd lived in this world longer than he had. She knew how cruel people could be, how harsh judgment felt, how completely society could turn its back on those who broke its rules. "What do?" she asked. "We tell the truth. We face it together. And we trust that somehow we'll make it through." 2 weeks later, Kayamika could no longer hide her morning sickness. She'd been vomiting between classes, looking pale and exhausted. Her colleagues had started asking questions. And then one day, a student saw Chikwudi leaving her apartment building early in the morning. By afternoon, the rumors were everywhere. By evening, the university administration had called her in for a meeting. By the next morning, the story was all over campus. The mathematics lecturer was pregnant for her student, for someone 6 years younger. The scandal was explosive. Students whispered in hallways. Lecturers shook their heads in disgust. The university senate held an emergency meeting. Kayamika sat in her apartment, her phone ringing constantly with calls from colleagues, family, former friends. She didn't answer. She just sat on her sofa, one hand on her growing belly, waiting for Chikwudi to arrive. When he did, his face was grim. "My father knows," he said. "Someone from a village saw the news online. He's furious. So is my mother. She called me a disgrace to the family." They sat together in the gathering darkness, holding hands, knowing that this was just the beginning. Tomorrow would bring more judgment, more shame, more consequences. But for tonight, they had each other. And they had to believe that somehow that would be enough. A teacher pregnant for a student, this is already controversial. But wait until you see what society does to them. If this story is already touching your heart, smash that like button and subscribe to AfricanTales by Zion. Drop a comment. Do you think age should matter when it's true love? Next chapter shows how brutal society can be. You won't believe what happens next. Turn on notifications. The letter arrived at 7 a.m., delivered by a university messenger who wouldn't meet Kayamika's eyes. "Dear Miss Kayamika Obi, following allegations of gross misconduct in violation of the university's code of ethics, your employment as a lecturer in the mathematics department is hereby terminated with immediate effect. You are required to return all university property and clear your office by 5 p.m. today. Your final salary will be processed, minus deductions for breach of contract. Furthermore, your case has been reported to the Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria. Your teaching license is under review and will likely be suspended pending investigation. Signed, Vice Chancellor, River State University." Kayamika read the letter 3 times, her hands shaking so badly the paper rattled. Terminated. License suspended. Career destroyed. All in 3 paragraphs. Her phone rang. It was Chikwudi. "They've expelled me," he said without preamble. His voice was hollow. "Won't let me take my final exams. Won't let me complete my degree. 4 years of engineering school, and they're saying I can't graduate because of moral misconduct." Kayamika closed her eyes. "Chikwudi, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. If I had been stronger, if I had said no—" "Don't," he interrupted. "Don't blame yourself. I made my own choices. I chose to love you, and I'd choose it again." But the conviction in his voice couldn't mask the devastation. For years of his life, thousands of naira in school fees, his entire future, gone. By noon, Kayamika had cleared her office under the disgusted stares of her colleagues. No one said goodbye. No one wished her well. They simply watched as she packed her books and awards into boxes, whispering to each other as she passed. "Shameful," one lecturer muttered. "She preyed on that poor boy," another said. "He's young enough to be her younger brother." "What kind of woman does this?" a female colleague asked loudly. A teacher is supposed to be a role model, not a predator. Kayamika wanted to scream that Chikwudi wasn't a victim, that their love was real, that age was just a number when 2 adults cared for each other. But she knew they wouldn't listen. They'd already made up their minds. By evening, things got worse. Chikwudi called her, his voice tight with pain. "My father has disowned me. He said I'm no longer his son. He's telling everyone in the village that I'm dead to him." Chief Eze's rejection had been brutal and public. The respected village chief had called a family meeting and announced in front of everyone that Chukwudi was no longer welcome in their home, would receive no support, and that anyone in the family who helped him would face consequences. He said, "I brought shame to the family name." Chukwudi continued, "That marrying a woman older than me, a woman who was my teacher, makes me weak, makes me a disgrace." He said, "Real men don't let women manipulate them." "I didn't manipulate you," Kayamika said, tears streaming down her face. "I know, but he won't listen. He's blocked my number. My mother tried to speak up for me, but he silenced her. My brothers won't talk to me. I'm completely cut off." Kayamika's own family situation was equally devastating. Her mother had called that morning, weeping, "How could you do this to us?" Mama had cried, "A student, Kayamika, you were supposed to be the pride of our family. The first person to get a university degree, to become a lecturer, and now you've thrown it all away for what? For a boy young enough to be your younger brother? Mama, I love him." Love. Her mother's voice had turned sharp. "You call this love? This is foolishness. This is disgrace. Your late father would be ashamed of you." The words had cut deeper than any physical wound. "I want to help you," Mama had continued, her voice breaking. "You're my daughter. But Chief Eze has made it clear. Anyone who supports you will face his anger. He's a powerful man in this community. If I help you, he'll make life difficult for all of us. Your uncles, your cousins. Everyone is afraid of him. I'm sorry, Kayamika. I'm so sorry. But you're on your own." Then she'd hung up. By the end of the week, Kayamika and Chukwudi had lost everything. No jobs, no family support, no place to live. Kayamika's landlord, hearing the scandal, had asked her to leave. Churches they approached for marriage refused them, calling their relationship ungodly and inappropriate. They sat in Kayamika's nearly empty apartment. The landlord had given her 1 week to vacate, surrounded by packed boxes, with nowhere to go. "I have 15,000 naira in savings," Kayamika said quietly. "That's all." "I have 8,000, Chukwudi added. "My father froze my account. That's all I managed to withdraw." 23,000 naira. That's what they had to start a new life, with a baby coming in 7 months. "What do we do?" Kayamika asked, one hand unconsciously moving to her small bump. Chukwudi took her hand. "We leave. We go to Lagos. Start fresh where no one knows us." "Lagos." Kayamika laughed bitterly. "With 23,000 naira? We can't even afford a decent place in Port Harcourt. Then we'll find somewhere we can afford. We'll find work. We'll survive. And the baby? We'll figure it out. Together." But even as he said the words, both of them felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down. They were leaving with nothing. No support, no safety net, no backup plan. Just 23,000 naira and the clothes in their bags. On their last day in Port Harcourt, they stood at the bus park, waiting for the overnight bus to Lagos. Around them, families said warm goodbyes to traveling relatives. Children laughed. Couples embraced. Kayamika and Chukwudi stood alone, holding warm bags, neither of their families there to see them off. The people who'd once loved them had turned their backs completely. As the bus pulled away from Port Harcourt, heading toward Lagos and an uncertain future, Kayamika looked back at the city lights fading in the distance. Everything she'd known, everyone she'd loved, all of it left behind. She turned to Chukwudi, who was staring straight ahead, his jaw set with determination even though his eyes showed fear. "Are we making a mistake?" she whispered. He took her hand. "No, staying would have been the mistake. At least in Lagos, we have a chance. Here we had nothing." Kayamika wanted to believe him, but as the bus rolled to the darkness toward a city that didn't know them, carrying them toward a future they couldn't predict, she couldn't shake the feeling that the real struggle was just beginning. And she was right. Oh my God, they lost everything. Their families disowned them. Can you imagine being rejected by everyone you love? If this is breaking your heart, like this video and subscribe to African Tales by Zion. Comment below. Have you ever been judged unfairly by society? Share this with someone who needs to hear this story. Next chapter shows her struggle in Lagos, And trust me, it gets so much harder before it gets better. Hit that notification bell. The room was exactly what 20,000 naira could rent in Ajigunle, Lagos's most notorious slum. One room, barely 10 feet by 10 feet. A single window with broken louvers. Walls stained with mold. A ceiling that leaked when it rained. And a shared bathroom down the hall that serviced 12 other families. This is it. Kayamika stood in the doorway, staring at the space that would be their home. The landlord, an elderly woman with sympathetic eyes, nodded. I know it's not much, but it's all I have for that price. You said you needed something immediately, and you only had 20,000. They'd spent 3,000 on the bus fare to Lagos and food for the journey. 20,000 was all they had left. We'll take it, Chukwudi said. That first night, lying on a thin mat on the concrete floor, they couldn't afford a mattress yet. Kayamika cried silently while Chukwudi pretended to sleep beside her. Through the thin walls, they could hear their neighbors, arguments, crying children, loud music. Welcome to Ajigunle. The next morning, they woke to reality. They needed jobs. Immediately. But finding work wasn't as easy as they'd hoped. Do you have Lagos references? Every employer asked. No, we just moved here. Experience in manual labor? No, I'm a teacher. He's an engineering student. Sorry, we need people who can start immediately and know the work. Day after day, they searched, and day after day, they were rejected. By the end of the second week, their money was down to 8,000 naira. They'd been eating once a day, usually Gary and groundnuts. Kayamika's pregnancy nausea had gotten worse, but she had no money for medicine. Then Chukwudi got his first job, washing cars at a nearby junction for 500 naira per day. It was hard work under the scorching Lagos sun, but it was money. Kayamika, 4 months pregnant now with a small but visible bump, tried to find work as a teacher. But no school would hire her without proper documentation. And even if they would, the moment they heard she was pregnant, they'd turn her away. Try the markets, one woman suggested. They're always looking for people to sell things. And so Kayamika became what she'd never imagined, a pure water seller. She'd buy sachets of pure water in bulk, 20 naira per bag, and sell them for 50 naira at traffic lights in busy intersections. On a good day, she'd make 800 naira profit. On bad days, less than 300. The first time she walked out in her faded dress, carrying a basin of pure water on her head, Kayamika wanted to disappear. She, who used to stand in front of university students teaching calculus, was now shouting pure water at car windows. The humiliation was crushing. Pure water. Cold pure water, she called, waddling between cars and Lagos traffic, her pregnant belly growing larger each week. Some drivers took pity on her. Others ignored her. A few made cruel comments about pregnant women who should be home resting instead of disturbing traffic. Every night, she'd come home with swollen feet, sunburn on her face, and barely enough money to buy food for the next day. Chukwudi would massage her feet and count their earnings, usually between 1,200 and 1,500 naira combined. Rent was 20,000 naira per month. Food, transport, and water cost at least 1,000 naira daily. They were barely surviving, and the baby was coming in 3 months. We need to save for the hospital, Kayamika said one evening, looking at their money box. They'd managed to save 4,500 naira in 2 months. Government hospitals are cheaper, Chukwudi said. Maybe 15,000 naira for delivery. They looked at their savings. At this rate, they wouldn't have enough by the time the baby came. The stress was breaking them. One night, after an especially difficult day, Kayamika had been chased by area boys who tried to steal her water, and Chukwudi had been paid only 300 naira because one customer had driven off without paying. They had their first real fight. I can't do this anymore, Kayamika sobbed, sitting on their mat, her 7-month belly making it hard to get comfortable. I'm so tired. My feet hurt all the time. We have no money. The baby is coming and we have nothing. No clothes, no diapers, nothing. What do you want me to do? Chukwudi snapped, his own frustration boiling over. I'm working as hard as I can. You think I enjoy washing cars in the sun all day? I didn't say that. Then what are you saying? That we should have stayed in Port Harcourt? Let your mother and my father control our lives? Maybe we should have. The words came out before she could stop them. At least there we had something. Here we have nothing. We're living like beggars. The silence that followed was deafening. So you regret it? Chukwudi said quietly. You regret choosing me. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. He stood up. I'm going out. It's 10 p.m. Where are you going? But he was already gone, walking out into the dangerous Ajigunal night. Kayamika sat alone in their room, crying, one hand on her belly where the baby was kicking. She didn't regret loving Chukwudi, but she couldn't lie. This life was harder than anything she'd imagined. The poverty, the hunger, the constant stress, the approaching delivery with no money for the hospital. She was terrified. Chukwudi walked through Ajigunal's dark streets, not caring about the danger. His mind was a storm of frustration, fear, and shame. He'd promised to take care of Kayamika, to make everything work. Instead, he was watching the woman he loved suffer, selling water in traffic while pregnant, living in a room that wasn't fit for animals. What kind of man was he? His father had been right. He brought shame and suffering to someone he claimed to love. Maybe he should leave, go somewhere else, send money when he could. Maybe Kayamika would be better off without him dragging her down. He was seriously considering it when he saw a woman in labor being rushed to the hospital by her family. Her husband ran alongside, her mother supporting her, relatives following with bags. That's what Kayamika deserved. Support, family, dignity. Instead, she had him, a broke ex-student with nothing to offer. Chukwudi stood at a crossroads, literally and figuratively. One direction led back to Ajigunal, to Kayamika, to their suffering. The other led to the motor park, where he could catch a night bus to anywhere, leave this all behind. He stood there for 10 minutes, wrestling with himself. Then he thought about Kayamika's face when she'd first told him she loved him, the way she'd laughed at his jokes during their tutoring sessions, how she'd hold her belly and smile when the baby kicked, the trust in her eyes when she'd agreed to come to Lagos with him. He turned back toward Ajigunal. When he opened their door at 1 a.m., Kayamika was still awake, sitting on the mat, crying. I thought you left, she whispered. I thought you weren't coming back. I thought about it, he admitted, sitting beside her. But I couldn't. I can't leave you, Kayamika. I love you too much. She collapsed against him, sobbing. I'm sorry. I don't regret choosing you. I'm just scared. I'm so scared. Me too. He held her tight. But we're going to make it. I don't know how yet, but we will. I promise you. They held each other in that small room, two people who'd lost everything but each other, making promises they desperately hoped they could keep. The baby kicked between them, a reminder that time was running out. They had 1 month until delivery, and they still had no money, no hospital plan, no baby items. But that night, they made a pact. No matter how hard it got, they wouldn't give up on each other, on their baby, on their future. They would survive this together. This is absolutely heartbreaking. A former teacher selling pure water in the streets while pregnant. If you're feeling their pain, smash that like button and subscribe to AfricanTales by Zion. Drop a comment. Could your love survive this kind of poverty and suffering? Next chapter is where they almost give up completely. It's the most emotional part. Share this video because everyone needs to see what happens next. Turn on notifications. Kayamika was 8 months pregnant when the rains came. Lagos' rainy season was brutal. Heavy downpours that turned streets into rivers and made it impossible to sell pure water. For 3 days straight, it rained, and for 3 days straight, they had no income. Their savings, carefully accumulated 8,000 naira for hospital delivery, began to disappear. 500 naira for food, 100 naira for kerosene, 200 naira for water. By the 4th day, they were down to 6,000 naira and had eaten only Gary for 2 days straight. Chukwudi went out in the rain to look for work, and he worked. He washed cars in the rain, helped people carry loads, anything to make money. He came back soaked and sick, coughing, with only 200 naira. That night, Kayamika felt the first contractions. "It's too early," she gasped, gripping her belly. "I still have 3 weeks." But the baby wasn't waiting. The contractions got stronger. "We need to get you to the hospital," Chikwudi said, panic in his voice. "We don't have enough money." "We'll figure out. Come on." They made it to the nearest general hospital at 2 a.m. in the rain. The nurse at reception looked at them, soaking wet, obviously poor, desperate, and sighed. "Registration fee is 5,000 naira, she said. "Delivery will be another 15,000 minimum, depending on if there are complications." "We only have 6,000, Chikwudi said. "Then you can't be admitted. Try the general hospital in Ojo. They sometimes take patients who can't pay and bill them later." "She's in labor now," Chikwudi pleaded. "She can't travel to Ojo in this condition." The nurse looked at Kayamika, who was bent over in pain, water from the broken bag mixing with rainwater on her dress. "Fine, pay the 5,000, but you'll need to find the rest before she can be discharged with the baby." They paid. That left them with 1,000 naira. The labor lasted 16 hours. 16 hours of Kayamika screaming in pain in a crowded ward with 4 other laboring women. 16 hours of Chikwudi holding her hand, unable to do anything else, watching her suffer. Finally, at 6 p.m. the next day, their son was born. The midwife placed a tiny, crying baby in Kayamika's arms, and despite everything, the pain, the poverty, the suffering, Kayamika smiled. "He's beautiful," she whispered. "He looks like you," Chikwudi said, tears streaming down his face. They named him Chibuzo, "God leads," because if God wasn't leading them, they had no idea how they would survive. But the joy was short-lived. "Madam, you need to pay the remaining bill before discharge," the nurse said the next morning. 15,000 naira. "We don't have it," Chikwudi said. "We only have 1,000 naira left." "Then you can't leave. You and the baby will stay here until the bill is paid. And there's a daily stay charge of 500 naira. They were trapped. Kayamika and baby Chibuzo couldn't leave the hospital without paying, but they had no money to pay. Meanwhile, every day they stayed added more debt. Chikwudi spent that day running around Lagos, begging for help. He went to churches. They prayed for him but gave nothing. He tried to borrow from the people he'd worked for washing cars. They laughed at him. He even considered stealing, but couldn't bring himself to do it. He came back to the hospital at 8 p.m. with 800 naira he'd made carrying loads at a market. "That's all?" the nurse asked. "You still owe 14,200 naira, plus 2 days stay charge. That's 15,200 total now." Chikwudi sat on the floor of the hospital corridor, his head in his hands, and broke down crying. He'd failed. He couldn't even pay for his son's birth. What kind of father was he? Inside the ward, Kayamika held baby Chibuzo, who was crying from hunger. Her breast milk had barely come in, and the baby needed formula, which cost money they didn't have. A kind woman in the next bed had shared some of hers, but she was being discharged today. After she left, what would Kayamika do? That night was the darkest of their lives. Chikwudi sat in the hospital corridor. Kayamika lay in the ward with a crying, hungry baby. They owed money they couldn't pay. They had no home to take the baby to, even if they could leave. Their landlord had rented out their room when they couldn't pay rent on time. They literally had nothing. Nowhere to go. No one to help them. No way forward. At midnight, Chikwudi walked out of the hospital into the night. He just walked, not caring where, tears streaming down his face. "What do I do?" he shouted at the sky. "What am I supposed to do?" He thought about his father's compound in the village, the big house, the full barns, the respect. He'd given up all of that for love. And what had it gotten him? Poverty, suffering, a baby he couldn't even feed. Maybe he should go back, beg his father for forgiveness. Maybe Chief Eves would take pity, would help, would at least make sure Kayamika and the baby were cared for even if he never forgave Chikwudi. He was seriously considering it when an elderly security guard from the hospital approached him. "Young man, why are you crying?" Chikwudi told him everything. The guard listened patiently. "You love her?" the guard asked. "More than anything." "And the baby?" He's my son. I'd give my life for him. The guard nodded. Then don't give up. Not now. The darkest hour is just before dawn. You've come this far. You've lost everything but each other. Don't lose that, too. But I have no money, no way to pay the bill, no place to take them even if I could. The guard reached into his pocket and pulled out 5,000 naira. This is my salary for this week. Take it. Pay some of the bill. Figure out the rest tomorrow. I can't take your salary. Yes, you can, because someone helped me when I was young and desperate. Now I'm helping you. When you succeed one day, and you will succeed, help someone else. Chikwudi took the money, crying, and thanked the man profusely. He went back to the hospital ward where Kayamika was awake, holding their sleeping son. I got more money, he said. Showed her the 5,000 naira. It's not enough, but it's something. Where'd you get it? He told her about the security guard. Kayamika started crying. We have to pay him back. We will, when we can. But Kayamika, he knelt beside the bed. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. You gave up everything for me, and I can't even provide basic things for you and our son. Stop, she said, taking his hand. You didn't force me to love you. I chose this. I chose us, and I'd choose it again. Even after everything? Even after everything. They held hands in that hospital ward, their baby sleeping between them, and made a new promise. They would survive this night, and the next night, and the one after that, one day at a time, one small victory at a time, because they still had each other. They still had their son. And somehow, that had to be enough to keep going. The next morning, Chikwudi paid the security guards 5,000 naira toward the bill. They still owed 10,200 naira, but the hospital agreed to let them leave if they signed a payment agreement. They had nowhere to go, so the kind security guard let them stay in the security post for 2 days until they found a new room to rent. This one even smaller than the last, but only 15,000 naira, and the landlord let them pay 5,000 as deposit. Baby Chibuzo's first home was a room with barely space for a mat, with walls so thin they could hear everything from the next room, with no crib, no baby clothes except the hospital gown he'd been born in. But he was alive. They were together. And somehow they would build from here. I literally have tears. They almost broke up right before the baby came, but they fought for their love. If this story is moving you, like this video and subscribe to AfricanTales by Zion. Comment. What would you have done in their situation? Would you have stayed or left? Next chapter is the final chapter, and you won't believe their incredible comeback. Share this with everyone. Hit that notification bell, because the ending is beautiful. Baby Chibuzo's crying woke them at 5 a.m. Kayamika, exhausted from night feedings, groaned and reached for their son. They'd been in their new room for a week, and the reality of caring for a newborn with no resources was hitting them hard. Formula cost 800 naira per tin and lasted 3 days. Diapers were 50 naira each. They couldn't afford either. Kayamika's breast milk had finally come in fully, which helped with feeding. For diapers, they resorted to cutting up old clothes and washing them. Humiliating but free. I need to find more work, Chikwudi said, getting up from a mat. His car washing job barely made 500 naira a day. It wasn't enough. That morning, while walking through their neighborhood with Chibuzo strapped to her back, Kayamika noticed a broken generator outside a shop. Why don't you fix it? She asked Chikwudi when she got home. What? You're an engineering student. You know how generators work. That shop owner probably can't afford proper repair. Maybe you could fix it for less. Chikwudi stared at her. In all the struggle and suffering, he'd forgotten what he was trained to do. He was an engineer, or almost was, before being expelled. He knew how machines worked. You're right, he said slowly. I could try. That afternoon, he approached the shop owner about the broken generator. Can you really fix it? The man asked skeptically, looking at Chikwidi's worn clothes and young face. Yes, sir. I was studying engineering before I had to leave school. Let me try. If I can't fix it, you pay nothing. If I can, pay me whatever you think is fair. The shop owner agreed. It took Chikwudi 3 hours and some improvised tools borrowed from neighbors, but he got the generator running. The shop owner was so pleased he paid him 2,000 naira, more than Chikwudi made in 4 days of washing cars. "You're good at this," the shop owner said. "If you can fix my friend's generator too, I'll refer you." Word spread slowly through the neighborhood. The young man who could fix generators and electronics cheaply. People started bringing him broken radios, fans, televisions. His payment varied. Sometimes 500 naira, sometimes 1,500, occasionally 3,000 for bigger repairs. It wasn't much, but it was better than washing cars. Kayamika, unable to carry pure water with baby Chibuzo on her back, started something different. She noticed that many working mothers in their neighborhood struggled to find someone to watch their children during the day. "I could watch them," she told one neighbor. "I'm home with Chibuzo anyway. I was a teacher before, so I can even teach them basic things." The neighbor agreed to pay 200 naira per day. Soon, Kayamika was watching 4 children during the day, making 800 naira daily. She'd teach them numbers and letters while caring for them, turning their small room into an informal daycare. The money was still tight, barely enough for food and rent, but they weren't starving anymore. They could buy formula when breast milk wasn't enough. They could afford soap to wash Chibuzo's cloth diapers. 6 months after Chibuzo's birth, something shifted. Chikwidi's repair business had grown through word of mouth. He was making between 3,000 and 5,000 naira a week. Kayamika was watching 8 children now, making 1,600 naira daily. They were surviving. More than surviving. They were slowly climbing out of the pit. 1 year after Chibuzo's birth, they'd saved enough to buy Chikwudi proper tools and electronic parts. His repair business became more professional. He could handle bigger jobs. Kayamika had 15 children in her care now. She'd rented a room next to theirs and turned it into a proper daycare space. Parents paid 1,000 naira per child per week. That was 15,000 naira weekly. By Chibuzo's 2nd birthday, they'd moved to a better area, a small flat with 2 rooms, a kitchen, and their own bathroom. They bought their first mattress, their first real furniture. "We're doing it," Kayamika whispered one night, looking at their son sleeping peacefully in an actual bed, not on the floor. "We're really doing it." 3 years after Chibuzo's birth, Chikwudi rented a small shop on a busy street. He painted a sign, "Chikwudi Electronics Repair, all repairs, fair prices." Business boomed. He was making 50,000 naira some months. Kayamika's daycare had grown too. She now had 25 children and had hired 2 assistants. She'd registered officially as Kayama's Early Learning Center. Parents loved it because the children learned so much. Kayamika's teaching background made the difference. For years after arriving in Lagos with 23,000 naira and nowhere to go, they had a savings account with 200,000 naira in it. 5 years after losing everything, Chikwudi owned a proper electronics shop with 3 employees. Kayamika's learning center had expanded to 40 children and had a waiting list. They'd moved to a small house with 3 bedrooms. Chibuzo, now 5, went to a decent school. They had furniture, a television, a small car they bought used but in good condition. One evening, after putting Chibuzo to bed, they sat in their living room, their actual living room, with a sofa and carpet, and looked at each other. "Do you remember that night?" Kayamika asked. "When you walked down the rain, and I thought you weren't coming back?" "I think about it often," Chikwudi admitted. "I almost didn't come back. I almost gave up." "What made you return?" "Love, and the realization that running away wouldn't solve anything. We'd already lost everything. The only thing we had left was each other, and that was worth fighting for." Kayamika moved closer to him. "It was worth it, wasn't it? All the suffering, all the struggle. It was worth it to be here now." "Yes," he said, kissing her forehead. "Every difficult moment was worth it to have this, to have you, to have our son, to have built this life together." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sound of Chibuzo's gentle breathing from his bedroom. Their son, who'd been born in a hospital they couldn't afford, who'd worn cloth diapers cut from old shirts, who'd slept on floors in rooms that leaked when it rained. Now he had his own bed, his own clothes, his own toys. He was healthy, happy, thriving. "Your repair shop is doing really well," Kayamika said, Have you thought about expanding? I've been thinking about it. Maybe open a second location, or start selling electronics, not just repairing them. And I've been thinking about adding afternoon tutoring sessions to the learning center for older children. There's demand for it. They talked late into the night about their plans, their dreams, the future they were building. A future that had seemed impossible 5 years ago, when they'd arrived in Lagos broken and desperate. The next morning, as Kayamika prepared Chibuzo for school and Chikwudi got ready to open his shop, there was a knock at the door. Chikwudi opened it to find a stranger, a middle-aged man in a suit. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Chikwudi Ease and Kayamika Obi. Are they here?" "I'm Chikwudi. That's my wife Kayamika," he said, gesturing inside where Kayamika had come to see who was at the door. "My name is Barrister Okafor. I'm a lawyer from Port Harcourt. I've been trying to locate you for several months." Kayamika's hand went to her chest. "Is something wrong? Is someone dead?" "No, nothing like that. But your families have been looking for you. Your mother, Mrs. Obi, and Chief Ease, Chikwudi's father. They've asked me to find you and—" He paused. "They want to see you. Both of you." Chikwudi and Kayamika exchanged glances. 5 years. 5 years of silence from the families who disowned them, rejected them, turned their backs when they needed help most. Why now? Chikwudi asked, his voice cold. 5 years ago. They wanted nothing to do with us. What changed? Barrister Okafor shifted uncomfortably. "I think that's something they should tell you themselves. But I can say this. They've heard about your success, about your businesses, and they want to reconnect." "Our success," Kayamika repeated bitterly. "They did want to know us when we were suffering. But now that we've made something of ourselves—" "I'm just a messenger," the lawyer said. "Here are their contact details. What you do with them is up to you." He handed Chikwudi an envelope and left. Kayamika and Chikwudi stood in their doorway, looking at the envelope containing phone numbers and addresses of the families who'd abandoned them. "What do we do?" Kayamika asked. "I don't know," Chikwudi admitted. "Part of me wants to tear this up and forget they exist. They don't deserve to be part of our lives after what they did. But they're still our families. And Chibuzo's grandparents. He's never met them." They stood there for a long moment, the envelope between them representing a bridge to a past they'd tried to leave behind. But that was a decision for another day. For now, they had a son to get ready for school, businesses to run, a life they'd built from nothing to protect and grow. Whatever happened with their families would happen on their terms, in their time, because they'd learned the hard way that the only people they could truly count on was each other. And that lesson had made them stronger than their families could ever imagine. End of part 1. To be continued in part 2. What a beautiful comeback. They went from nothing to success, from rejection to building their own empire. If you loved part 1 of this incredible story, smash that like button and subscribe to African Tales by Zion. Drop a comment. Should I make part 2? Type, "Yes, part 2. If you want to see what happens when their families who abandoned them come back begging for help. Will Kayamika and Chikwudi forgive them or turn their backs? Comment part 2 below. Share this video with everyone. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss part 2. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.